was this frail, bald girl who mimicked her movements? Surely it couldn't be her. She had shoulder-length brown hair and bright, cheery eyes. She reached out. So did the girl.
They and all other Jews faced enormous discrimination. About a month after Hester and her family moved back to Amsterdam, her family, with the exception of her, got a notification to go to what the Germans called work camps. Hester Kohl's story is very unique and gives me a feeling that, even in the darkest times, when it seems like you're at your lowest point in your life, that eventually you will come back, stronger than ever, able to accomplish anything.
Carla estimates that she helped about 40 Jews, changing their names and creating fake IDs for them. At one point, Carla even disguised herself as a German nurse to save her cousin from a train that was headed to a concentration camp. But throughout all of Carla's life, she has kept one word close to her heart. In her words, respect is the most important word in the vocabulary. If you have respect for everyone you come in contact with, she says, life will be so much easier and the world will be a better place.
was this frail, bald girl who mimicked her movements. Surely it couldn't be her. She had shoulder-length brown hair and bright, cheery eyes. She reached out. So did the girl.
They and all other Jews faced enormous discrimination. About a month after Hester and her family moved back to Amsterdam, her family, with the exception of her, got a notification to go to what the Germans called work camps. Hester Kohl's story is very unique and gives me a feeling that, even in the darkest times, when it seems like you're at your lowest point in your life, that eventually you will come back, stronger than ever, able to accomplish anything.
Carla estimates that she helped about 40 Jews, changing their names and creating fake IDs for them. At one point, Carla even disguised herself as a German nurse to save her cousin from a train that was headed to a concentration camp. But throughout all of Carla's life, she has kept one word close to her heart. In her words, respect is the most important word in the vocabulary. If you have respect for everyone you come in contact with, she says, life will be so much easier and the world will be a better place.
My name is Magda Shalom. I was born in Győr, Hungary. And I am a survivor of Auschwitz.
My name is Bob Hershkowitz, and I was born in Belgium.
My name is Joshua Gortler. I was born in a very small town.
My name is Susie Sherman. I was born in 1930.
My name is George Baikovsky, and I was born on a farm in
My name is Hester Kuhl, and I was born in Amsterdam.
I'm Peter Dam. I was born in Berlin, Germany.
My name is Bertie Marson, and I was born in Amsterdam.
My name is Eva Tannenbaum Cummins, and I'm from Berlin, Germany.
My name is Peter Metzelar, born in Amsterdam, Holland.
My name is Frida Zuri. I was born in 1929 in Moravska Ostrava.
I'm Steve Adler. I was born in Berlin, Germany, 1930. I was 8.5 years old when my mother and father put me on a train to Hamburg and then on a ship to London.
My name is Henry Friedman. I was born in Brody, Poland. My liberty was taken away from me when I was 14 years old.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Paul Bloom, and this is my wife, Leora. We'd like to welcome you to the first ever virtual Voices for Humanity Luncheon. We know how busy everyone is and that we're all spending a remarkable amount of time online and attending virtual events, so we want you to know how much we value and appreciate your time today. Leora and I are honored to co-chair this year's luncheon. We're thrilled to be able to help the Holocaust Center for Humanity raise much-needed funds during this particularly difficult time. And luckily, we both love a challenge. First, we'd like to thank our corporate sponsors and champions for change, who have already made meaningful donations that have allowed the center to continue its very important work. And we'd like to give a special shout out to our presenting corporate sponsor, Goldman Sachs, and our Champions for Change presenting sponsors, Steve Barral, Carl and Joanne Bianco, George Elbaum and Mimi Jensen, and Debbie Killinger. And it's lunchtime, and we really hope that many of you reached out to our restaurant partners who are all donating a portion of the proceeds from the meals you are enjoying today, and we hope you'll continue to support them.
We're gathered here today to learn about and support the center's work. Our goal is $1 million. A lofty goal to be sure, but we've already raised $753,929. And today, every dollar makes an impact. You can donate at any time during this event by clicking on the donate button above or below the live stream on your screen. I was born in South Africa to parents whose fathers immigrated from Lithuania as teenagers. My paternal grandfather, Simon Gur, left his parents and 7 siblings when he was 17. He traveled to Cape Town to work as an apprentice in a butchery owned by a family with roots in his same small hometown of Birj, Lithuania. He had only a 2nd grade education, but spoke Yiddish, Lithuanian, Russian, Polish, and German. He worked hard, learned English and Afrikaans, and sent all the money he could back to his family in Lithuania. Eventually, his sister Zlata managed to buy passage on a ship to Argentina, but shortly afterwards, he stopped receiving responses to his letters, and he never heard from his Lithuanian family again. What he didn't know is that the villagers had taken all the Jews to an island in the river that runs through Birj, made them dig their own mass grave, and shot them. This story, and millions like it, still hang over us today. It's 2020, and we are still fighting bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and simple, ignorant hatred of the other, right here in Washington State. The mission of the Holocaust Center is to inspire students of all ages to confront bigotry and indifference, promote human dignity, and take action. And now, please welcome Governor Inslee, and then we invite you to join us to see the center's work in action.
Good afternoon, everyone. Governor Jay Inslee here. I am grateful all of you have taken the time to be here today, especially in these challenging times. You know, while gathering virtually might be new this year, the Center's efforts to protect the health and safety of Washingtonians, and particularly our most vulnerable populations, is not. So I appreciate your commitment. We know the value of the Holocaust Center for Humanity has never been clearer, and it's never been more urgent. We know that when we lose the ability to see and love the humanity in one another, we set the stage to be torn apart by fear and hatred. The Center's work to educate our students, educators, and communities about the cost of ignoring intolerance through Holocaust education is just crucial right now. We need to teach empathy and resilience by turning toward one another, not away. And few do that work better than the Holocaust Center for Humanity. I'm grateful for the Holocaust Center's help with Senate Bill 5612, which ensures students across our state have access to quality Holocaust education. I was proud to sign that bill. And we know the consequences of hate, and we cannot allow hatred to take root in our communities. It's the efforts of organizations like this that light our way and help build a more just and compassionate world. Thanks so much, and good luck.
What I've learned in my Holocaust unit is that there were so many people who lost their lives for just being different.
How easily it is for people to abuse power and what people will do if they're under the wrong leader.
The hatred that Hitler put on Jews and Holocaust victims.
To never discriminate no matter who.
Not to discriminate against different people and trying to be an upstander.
I think it's important that students learn about this history because it's history, but it's not history. I mean, these kinds of things are still happening. My goal for my students is for them to learn the history, but also to take it with them. I firmly believe it's really, really important that students study this history and understand what can happen when groups are targeted, especially by a government.
It's important to teach Holocaust curriculum, especially in a place like Spokane, because students don't always have the understanding about the precursors, the problems, and the specifics of what happened in the Holocaust. The Holocaust Center for Humanity works for me and works with me and other educators to be able to enhance the quality of education for our students.
As an ELA teacher, getting students to connect with someone's narrative, with someone's story, this unit is so much more engaging than other units that I've taught.
The teaching trunks in particular were really compelling. I think a good way for kids to kind of buy into or spend a little more time getting to know that material in a comfortable kind of way in a classroom.
I thought it was incredible, life-changing. I cried 6 times. All of the materials that were presented today and the stories that we were told today in the books, especially the books because I'm an English teacher, are really going to impact the kids. We don't have a lot of resources at my school, and the kids are hungry for knowledge, they're hungry for books, and they're hungry for education. And I think that is going to just open their eyes and really help them learn and see it in such a deeper way than they could have before.
I think it's very important to learn about the Holocaust so younger audiences just know that what happened wasn't okay.
We are in the midst of challenging and unprecedented times. The Holocaust Center for Humanity has been working around the clock to reinvent programs to meet the needs of our community. Our new book-by-book program offers free books to students in Washington State.
A few things that I got personally from this book would be the fact that one small act of kindness could lead to a sea of good acts.
And of course, our virtual Lunch and Learns with stories and presentations from members of our Speakers Bureau.
A big thank you to the Holocaust Center for making this
available to students. It was so easy to set up. This epidemic is giving us an opportunity to stay connected around the world.
I don't want anyone to be like, oh, this just happened once. Even if it didn't occur to you, I feel like you should have a say in it. You should talk about it. The more you talk about it, the less it will happen.
Learning about the Holocaust isn't I think everyone in the world needs to do at least once in their life. It just taught everyone so much and gave everyone so much questions.
What I think I'll remember of this experience now and in the future is we, the generation, need to get our voices out there. We have to speak up about everything. Literally, if we don't use our voices, then what's the point of having a voice at all?
I'm Beth Takikawa, Executive Director of the Winglet Museum in Seattle's Chinatown International District. During World War II, my mother in Bellevue and my father in Seattle, and every member of their families lost their homes, their livelihoods, and their rights. They were imprisoned based on racism and fear, along with over 120,000 Americans of Japanese descent. It changed my family's lives forever. Today, to our horror, in the wake of the COVID pandemic, we've seen government-instigated racism and hate targeting the Asian American community again. Partnering with the Holocaust Center for Humanity means so much to me personally. Our work is not done. We share an important story for all Americans to know, and I look forward to our partnership in the years to come.
My name is Jerry Price. I'm the OSPI Program Supervisor for Social Studies. It's been my pleasure to work with the Holocaust Center for Humanity from Senate Bill 5612, which asked for increased professional development and resources and materials for teaching of the Holocaust and other genocides in schools across Washington State. And the Holocaust Center for Humanity has done an incredible job of providing resources and materials to teachers already and will continue to do so. In times such as these, it's really important that our students have the tools and the knowledge to combat racism, discrimination, and the inhumane treatment of people here and across the world. And I'm so proud of the work that the Holocaust Center for Humanity has done in partnership with OSPI.
Hi, my name is Kadar Adan. I was born in a refugee camp in Kenya to a family who had fled violence and murder in Somalia. In 10th grade, while attending Garfield High School, I entered the center's writing and art contest and wrote that in the stories of the Holocaust and its survivors, I had seen parallels with my own life. My essay won first place, and I have been in contact with the center ever since. I attended Seattle Central College, transferred to Stanford University, and I currently work for Fidelity Investments. Law school is my next goal. For the rest of my life, the lessons of the Holocaust will stick with me, and I am doing my part to stand against hate and to be an upstander for peace and love among all people. Thank you to the Holocaust Center.
And thank you as well to Governor Inslee, Beth, Jerry, and Kadar for your incredible support today. It is now my honor to present the Voices for Humanity Award to David Alhadeff. David joined the board as treasurer, then as president from 2016 until the end of 2019. As board president, David oversaw an era of tremendous growth for the center. We doubled our staff, our board evolved to represent a wider range of perspectives, and our revenue grew to support our growing programs. Thank you, David, for your leadership and vision.
Good afternoon. It is my honor to accept the 2020 Voices for Humanity Award. I am deeply humbled by the recognition of the accomplishments which this award represents. Every time I walk into the Holocaust Center, I can't help but think of the many limbs of my family tree that were cut short because of the Holocaust. On my mother's side, my grandmother left me a picture as a stark reminder of what that meant to our family who perished in Poland. And on my father's side, there is a picture of my children in front of a memorial to the Jews deported from the island of Rhodes. The names on the plaque are the same as two of my children, Victor and Sophia. As immediate past president of the Holocaust Center's board of directors, for the past 4 years I set a number of important goals. Working with Dee and the rest of the talented staff and board, we made huge strides in improving our infrastructure, including governance, development, and programming, all while moving into our new museum. Working together around our shared vision, we achieved our goals. I'm delighted to pass the baton to our new board president, Lynn Smith. Today, our center's work remains as critical as ever. Education is the best weapon against growing anti-Semitism, racism, and discrimination. I could not be more proud of the role the center continues to play in teaching over 40,000 students per year about what can happen when anti-Semitism and discrimination are left unchecked. During this unprecedented time, the center quickly evolved and grew our programs to bring these important lessons to students and teachers working from home. If there ever was a time to support the work of the Holocaust Center, the time is now. I hope you'll join me today and take action through your support for a brighter future. Thank you for this award and the continued support of the Holocaust Center for Humanity.
Welcome to the Holocaust Center for Humanities Museum. We realize that many of you have never been to our museum, and so we invite you on a short tour of our exhibit, Finding Light in the Darkness. This exhibit is not a journey through a timeline of Holocaust history, but rather a walk through the human experience that was the Holocaust. We focus on the stories of local survivors as a way to find empathy, because when we find empathy, we can no longer see someone else as other. Teaching through stories opens doors to both history and compassion. In each phase of our exhibit, we learn about the Holocaust and that these lessons are relevant today. I'd like to start with this artifact, a book written by Nobel Prize winner Thomas Mann. You can see a red V for verboten, forbidden, inside the cover. Thousands of books written by dissidents and Jewish authors were banned and burned. The burning of books led to the closing of newspapers and access to information. Ultimately, the misinformation machine turned the country against its own people. Jews became the villains. This artifact teaches us about the dangers of a controlled media and misinformation. It teaches us about our obligation to seek the truth, question our sources, and understand the difference between fact and opinion. This section of our exhibit is called Changing World. How did a civil society turn against its own people? What was that slippery slope, and how can we recognize and prevent it when it begins? This doll tells the story of a 17-year-old girl, Ali Canis. Her family was in the Dutch underground and hid 40 Jewish people in their home. Ali was imprisoned and spent 5 months as a slave laborer. Stifled by the brutal conditions in the prison, she made this doll, finding scraps of cloth, thread, and even human hair. In an act of rebellion, she wrote, "Keep smiling," in English, in support of the Allies. This artifact teaches us today about resilience in times of adversity. We learn about countries, families, and individuals who at great risk rescued Jews. She challenges us to examine what moral courage looks like. This section of our exhibit is called Flight and Rescue. As the world closed its doors to Jewish refugees, Jews were left with few options. Many went into hiding, others were deported to camps and ghettos. In this section, we begin to understand the deportations and the killing machine. In our collection, we have a blanket that belonged to Siegfried Fedrid. He was deaf and miraculously survived Auschwitz and other camps because the Nazis valued his skills as a tailor. On a death march with typhus and biting cold weather, Fedrid had a blanket. Near death himself, he chose to share that blanket with 5 other men during the march. In doing so, he tries to save their lives, and in this act, saves our faith in humanity. Against all odds, he teaches us that we all have a responsibility and the ability to change the future. In this section, Ghettos and Camps, we learn that the Nazis could have never killed 6 million Jewish people and countless others without the willing collaboration and complicity of millions of people in every country they occupied. It challenges us to think about how we walk in the world today. In Liberation, we learn about the aftermath of genocide, trials, refugees, and the establishment of the State of Israel. We learn about other genocides and eventually how so many of the survivors found their way to Seattle. And finally, we end our exhibit with one question: what will you do? I often ask students, where did the violence begin? Did it begin in the camps, Or did it begin on a school playground where one child called another child a dirty Jew? Finding light in the darkness teaches us that we all have the power to change the things we can see: stereotypes, scapegoating, jokes, and name-calling. We all have a responsibility and the ability to change the future. Change begins with me.
Nora Eilenberg's story is one of true bravery and perseverance. In 1944, Nora and her husband Sam were deported to Auschwitz, where they were separated. Amazingly, both Nora and her husband were able to survive. The Eilenbergs eventually ended up in Seattle, where they lived a full life. This art piece shows Nora's experience in the Łódź ghetto, where she had to watch the birds fly freely every day, while she was restricted of almost all of her freedoms. Her story shows me that I should have gratitude for every day that I get to walk freely.
Inspired by Carla Paperzak's experiences during World War II, this painting was influenced by her stories and how the tragic event of the Holocaust has affected the world. Once part of a Dutch resistance against Nazi occupation in the Netherlands, she created false identification papers and secured hiding places for people the Nazis deemed undesirable. By doing so, she gave people a chance to survive the boils of World War II, as shown through the doves escaping a blood-soaked background. Represented by a Jewish identification badge used in the Netherlands, it reflects her memories of how she was adopted into Jewish culture at a young age. However, after World War II, she began to question her religious beliefs, as it brought back painful memories, but eventually decided to reconnect to the culture that she grew up with. Her memories of Judaism and her identity are shown through the Star of David being placed on her heart, as she continues to pass her memories of the Holocaust to the next generation, represented by the transition of the color red to a speckled white ribbon which weaves between the doves.
As a Jewish day school, the Seattle Hebrew Academy deeply understands the role of memory in our tradition. We appreciate the work of the Holocaust Center in helping us teach our students the lessons of the Holocaust. We appreciate the professional development for our teachers. We appreciate the curriculum materials. We appreciate the Speakers Bureau. We appreciate everything that you do for our community. Thank you so much in helping us navigate this most complicated of moments in history.
I'm Ty Hansen. I work at BECU, and I'm proud to be a part of the first ever Ambassador for Change cohort at the Holocaust Center for Humanity. I originally applied to be a part of the cohort because of the center's focus on education and awareness, and my experience has been incredible. Thank you to the Holocaust Center for Humanity for offering this opportunity for young adults to engage the center and for giving me the opportunity to serve our community.
Hello. I'm Lanisha DeBartolabin, Executive Director of the Northwest African American Museum of Seattle. We congratulate the Holocaust Center of Seattle. You do tremendously important, inspiring, and impactful work. The belated Representative John Lewis would always say, "We may not have chosen the times, but the times have chosen us." That is the eminent question of this moment in history. What are you doing with the time at hand? The work ahead is heavy but essential. Let's build the world we wish to see together. That is what the Holocaust Center of Seattle does. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "None of us are free until we are all free." I look forward to all that is ahead for the center. The Northwest African American Museum is delighted to partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Rivi, Ty, and Lanisha, for your words of support. Thank you for joining me earlier on a tour of our museum and for letting me join you in your living rooms, homes, and offices. Okay, I just can't contain my excitement. We are now at $808,152 to our goal of $1 million. I know we can do this. Really, really great. I'd like to express our deepest gratitude to Paul and Leora, our event chairs, and congratulations for a well-deserved recognition to David. I look forward to continuing our work together. I'd like to acknowledge that today's event falls just days before the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur reminds us that it's never too late to change, start again, and challenge ourselves to live differently. At the Holocaust Center for Humanity, we challenge ourselves to teach one of the most tragic chapters of human history, the catastrophe that restrains our very belief in the goodness of humanity, to inspire people to do better. We know that our center is only as strong as the challenges that we have the courage to undertake. Now, we're not just meeting the challenges of our time, we're facing them head on. Our entire staff didn't lose a minute when COVID-19 hit. Immediately, we rallied to meet the needs of students and teachers. We even created a resource for parents teaching from home. We didn't just reinvent our future, we recreated it. And the success is beyond our wildest dreams. Going almost entirely online has opened unexpected doors like Speakers Bureau presentation in South Korea, or most recently, by a school of 1,000 students who requested to attend our live virtual field trip in our museum. Imagine 1,000 students all at the same time from home experiencing a tour of our museum. Incredible. And with our incredible docents, of course. Before, we could only fit 50 students at a time in our museum. Teachers tell us that more than ever before, misinformation on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and other sources is exposing our students to unrestrained hate and Holocaust denial. We are there for our teachers with online professional development workshops teaching media literacy, Holocaust 101, or how to have difficult conversations about race and religions, topics relevant for our teachers today. We have to be there for them because we can't afford to miss a generation during a pandemic. Tomorrow's world will be born from what we teach our children today. In this moment, when we're struggling with our nation's history and debating on whether or not to take down statues and monuments, we know that lasting change isn't achieved by building pyramids or statues, but by the values we engrave on the hearts of our children, and they on theirs. A recent national study on Holocaust education found that students who studied the Holocaust in high school are more likely to stand up for others, recognize anti-Semitism, and challenge bias information. In this moment, after 30 years of experience in Holocaust education, our center is poised to meet the challenges of our time. The center's lessons are more essential and relevant than ever before. Today, I'd like to share a personal story. Before COVID-19, the prosecutor's office called me because a young man had just been released from incarceration. He'd committed a hate crime, and he'd been connected to a white supremacy group. The prosecutor had been to our luncheon, he connected the dots, and wanted this young man to experience our museum. I agreed to give him a tour. My time with him was filled with storytelling, human experiences, testimonies, and his questions. I'll never know what happened to him, but I know what he asked me just before he left. Can I bring my girlfriend here? On that day and every day, we know we're making a difference because we see it. Together, we are as strong as the challenges that we have the courage to undertake. And with an incredible staff and your support, we'll meet that challenge head on, together, and with our greatest tool, education. Our next video focuses on a school that needed our help. I invite you to come watch our center in action. Thank you.
We have had different issues at West Seattle High School. A lot of online things, students feeling comfortable using the N-word. Staff members start to report, hey, I was on the bus or waiting for the bus and I noticed this poster was up, or I saw this kind of graffiti and it's connected to white supremacy. We were hosting a club fair, and so one of our clubs was our BSU, our Black Student Union. It wasn't until after the club fair was over, everybody had cleaned up, and a student was taking a look at the actual sign-up sheet that they noticed that there were a couple names that were not students that we had. And when looked closely, it was mocking names like Obama. What was worse was someone had written the N-word on that paper. And for our students, that was extremely traumatizing. They felt like they were in a good place as a club to represent, to be prideful of what they were doing. To see this kind of hatred just blatantly right in front of them was really difficult for them to swallow.
When the incident was brought to my attention by a student, I felt sick to my stomach. I felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. I was mortified. I was appalled. Unfortunately, though, I was not shocked. To get to the bigger root of the problem, we contacted the Holocaust Center, and I reached out to Alana, and I was like, help! Could you please help us address this incident? And she answered me right away, and we're so grateful for that, because that really opened a beautiful door. The first training I took with the Holocaust Center was confronting incidences of anti-Semitism and hate. And they did the ADL pyramid of hate sort of thing, and that was in really dissecting and getting down to the root and things you can say when you encounter hateful statements.
I didn't know that certain numbers equaled out to certain messages. I didn't know that certain letters stood for certain things.
One thing that was very important that we learned at that training was zero indifference. And that is confronting any incident of hate or murmur or muttering and not acting like it didn't happen and not shoving it under the rug and confronting it in a gentle yet firm way.
What I worry about is this meme culture where everything's been kind of lightened. The opportunities that the Holocaust Center for Humanity provides for teachers is really radically shaped my unit that I teach every year. I think it's important to trust teenagers that they can be mature and they can learn how to show reverence and learn this hard history, because the alternative is social media, Google, YouTube.
I've seen some discrimination, and I haven't always been an upstander, so now I can learn to stand by someone and help them through it and stop bullying or discrimination when it starts.
After reaching out to Alana in the Holocaust Center, I felt hope. And I felt like there was a solution. It was almost like a lifeboat that we could reach out to and start growing to becoming a more anti-racist school.
It's more important than ever for us to lean on what we've built already here at West Seattle High School, and the practices of restorative justice, the knowledge that we've got from the trainings from the Holocaust Center have set us up to be a stronger community, to recognize hate, to point out hate, and to really just say that this is not going to be a place for us to have this happen within our halls.
I'm so proud of the work the Holocaust Center for Humanity has done and continues to do at schools like West Seattle. One of the new programs the center launched in response to the pandemic is Generation to Generation, which pairs community members and students with Holocaust survivors, many of whom are living alone. I signed up and was connected with Paula Stern, a survivor of Auschwitz who, with her late husband Klaus, were the very first Holocaust survivors to move to Seattle in 1946. Over several conversations, Paula has shared many stories with me, but none has impacted me more than her description of how her non-Jewish neighbors in Germany, who for many years were close family friends that helped each other celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, suddenly turned their backs on Paula's family. They even asked them to leave the apartment building they all shared for many years, just because they were Jewish. Paula said to me, "It's amazing how quickly good people could change their minds about us." It's a warning we must take seriously, especially in these polarized times. And it's my honor to introduce you to my friend, Paula Stern.
Was born to a Jewish family in 1942.
I was born in Arnstadt, Thüringen, August 22nd, 1922.
She was the youngest of 3 children and always dreamed of helping others.
I always wanted to be a children's nurse, baby nurse.
In 1940, as life became increasingly restricted and dangerous for Jews living in Germany, Paula found an opportunity to work on a farm outside of Berlin. It was there she met the love of her life, Klaus Stern.
In November 1940, I went to Neuendorf and I was working. Then I was stuck in the kitchen. There were a lot of them who asked me for little favors, and Klaus was one of them. But little by little we got closer, and one of those days he asked me to marry him. And I said yes. And he was a good dancer, but that didn't mean anything. It was just his personality. I liked his personality, and evidently he liked me.
Klaus and Paula were married on the farm in 1942. Uncertain of their future, they committed to meeting each other in her hometown if they ever separated. Only 9 months later, Klaus and Paula were deported to Auschwitz. Upon arrival, they were separated, and neither knew where the other went. Paula was selected for work and tattooed.
My number is 42008. The half-Jewish star was a sign of a Jewish prisoner.
Paula was assigned to the munitions factory in Auschwitz, known as the Union Commando. Her job was to measure each cone-shaped piece and compare it to a standard. In defiance, Paula occasionally discarded the good pieces to sabotage the Nazis' munitions. I was lucky I was never caught.
If I would have been caught, they would have done the same thing to me, what they did to the girls who got the powder, would have been hanged.
In the freezing winter of January 1945, the Nazis marched all of the remaining prisoners in Auschwitz north and away from the advancing Allied troops. Thousands died in the death marches. When Paula was finally liberated, she was anxious to return home with the hopes of finding Klaus. They had been separated, each surrounded by death, with no communication for 28 months. When she returned home, people told her to forget Klaus, to continue her life looking only forward. She would not. Klaus, liberated from a death march, near death with typhus and starvation, was sent to a hospital. In the hospital, he wrote a note and gave that note to a soldier to be delivered to Paula in her hometown. Miraculously, the note reached Paula, and it said, "Paula, I am alive. Please wait for me."
I just couldn't believe it, and he couldn't believe it. And he told me, he said, I remembered the number, house number, I remembered the street, I remembered the name. And I went through that every day. I was sick a few times, but I remembered I had to keep that in my mind. So I said, well, how did you make it? He said, because I knew I had to keep my promise. And I know you would do the same thing. And I was sick a few times, and I had to survive because my promise.
Paula and Klaus were the first survivor family to come to Seattle in 1946. At the time, no one spoke of their experience in the Holocaust, and no one wanted to hear their stories. But Klaus and Paula would not hide their past. During Klaus's time on the Holocaust Center for Humanity's Speakers Bureau, Klaus spoke to thousands of students and community members. When asked why he spoke, Klaus would often say that if he didn't speak, who would? And if he could prevent atrocities from happening, it was his duty to speak. Klaus went on to write his memoir and never stopped sharing his story until his death in 2013. Together, Paula and Klaus were unstoppable. And today, Paula continues that legacy by telling the world about what happened every chance she gets.
Good afternoon. I'm so pleased to join today's Voices for Humanity virtual luncheon. This work has never been more important. Recently, we've seen acts of discrimination and violence even in our own Chinatown International District, and of course all across communities in America, resulting from the current pandemic and divisive rhetoric. Black people who have been traumatized by systemic racism for hundreds of years are demanding justice, and yet are being labeled thugs for their advocacy. We're standing on a precipice. We know that when hate is left unchecked, unstoppable, unspeakable horrors follow. But we also know that we have an incredible tool to counter hate: education. Teaching empathy instead of hate, hope instead of fear, critical thinking instead of scapegoating, resilience instead of rigidity. These are the values that will heal our communities and our nation. And they always have. And that education must include an examination of history like the Holocaust and the internment of Japanese Americans, as well as contemporary forms of genocide and exclusion. Because it's important to emphasize the horrific consequences of unchecked racism, hatred, fear, intolerance, and divisiveness. So thank you for advocating for and supporting the power of education. And have a great luncheon, albeit virtually.
There's a lot of people who have Islamophobia, especially after 9/11 and everything, and there's still a lot of hate out there. It's shocking how people could just hate on religion. Not getting to know the person, but just immediately judging them by their religion, it seems so wrong, and it's not fair. You should get to know the content of their character before judging them.
Not only adults, kids down to the age of 6 had to wear that star.
I've had this very vivid memory in 2nd grade of this girl coming up to me and she was like, "Wow, why do you wear a towel on your head?" And I was like, "A towel?" And I was so confused because she knew nothing of my religion and she just immediately assumed. And it was, I didn't find it offending because we were both super young and I thought it was just kind of like a joke, but thinking of it now, like, people have no knowledge. Like, they never take the time to get to learn other people's religion or anything about their background.
Being Jewish and like having family members who we know that died in the Holocaust, it's like you already have questions about what happened, and it's like hearing a story like that, like some questions are answered and then you get like an infinite amount more questions. You'll never really know the answer, but it's like you'll always be thinking about them on like what did really happen and like how did it happen, and if they're sure it was like Pete's, if it was completely different than Pete's.
All I can think of, why didn't I go back 7 years ago, give him a hug, thank you for saving my life and Mom's life.
The thing that was most compelling about Pete's talk was just the insight that he gave, because it would have been one thing if he just went on stage and shared a ton of facts about the Holocaust and like what happened, but what he really went into was like how it affected him and what he was thinking during the whole thing. That really just showed us like a different perspective than we've ever seen or heard about. Everyone in there kind of realized, if like you look at the Holocaust, it's always like it's the big scale of everything, but it's like smaller scale stuff like that will happen every day. And it's like people really realize that they need to like stand up to it and like say something about it.
Something I'd want to voice to my peers is just do better. Like, don't follow and don't be a follower. Just don't follow others. If you believe something is wrong, then speak up about it. Don't just keep following someone because you think, oh, it makes you cooler. Oh, it benefits you in some way. No, if it's wrong, speak up about it.
Hello, upstanders. I'm Lynn Harris-Smith, the president of the Holocaust Center for Humanities Board of Directors. A huge thank you to former Governor Gary Locke for your incredible words of support today. I'm very excited to announce that so far we have raised $914,417. That is fantastic. Together, we can make a big impact for Holocaust education and a future without hate. I am so inspired by the students we just saw in the video and the work of our organization. I support it as my responsibility to the next generations to create a more just world. My family fled Europe to escape religious and ethnic persecution. Some did not make it. Others faced barriers here due to prejudice. Persecution, injustice, prejudice, all of these challenges still exist today. The best way to make progress, to bring about change, to end hate and intolerance, is education. You heard today how impactful Holocaust education is and how it empowers students to recognize and confront bigotry and then take action. Now, it's your turn to take action. Hate has not been in quarantine this year, quite the opposite. Times of crisis are breeding grounds in which hate takes root and grows. Our plans to scale our impact with virtual offerings requires that we meet our financial goal. We are so close, and with your support, we will get there. If you have already donated, thank you. Perhaps you've been inspired today to find a way to give just a little bit more. And if you have not yet donated, please click on the donate button on your screen now and make the most meaningful gift you can make in 2020. If you're planning to send in a check to the center, please go ahead and fill out the pledge form today before mailing your check. As we wait for the final number, please join me for a short video about our Legacy Speakers program, the future of our Speakers Bureau. I'm so excited. Let's hang in there for that final number. And thank you. Be the change.
So I'd like to take you on a journey with me back in time to Europe of the 1930s.
What I'm sharing with you today is the story of my father's survival, my family's survival.
These are my grandparents, Natalie and Murray Borenstein. I affectionately called them Papa and Grandma.
So here is my dad, Steve Adler. He would have been 6 years old, and he is dressed as a typical German schoolboy in 1936.
So this is a picture of us on her worn leather couch. This is her reading to me when I was a child.
I knew there was a connection between my parents, my mother, her parents, and the Holocaust, but no details were ever discussed.
I really took it, the onus of trying to understand how lucky I am to be here and how lucky I am to be able to share the stories of my grandparents.
We're close to finding out how much we've raised. Hang on just a few minutes longer.
Even during a pandemic, you came together to help ensure students across the Pacific Northwest have access to quality Holocaust education.
How incredible was it to hear from some of today's students? And in case you didn't catch this, Fatih and Max are only freshmen in high school. All the students you've heard from today have been inspired by their Holocaust education and live in communities all across our state. The sheer number of students the center reaches is quite amazing, over 40,000 annually.
Thank you for joining us today and for your generous support of the Holocaust Center for Humanity. We've been honored to chair this year's Voices for Humanity Luncheon and are wowed by your generosity.
Now the moment you've all been waiting for. Thanks to all of your incredible contributions, we have raised a total of over.
We're waiting
well, how about those Seahawks, Leora? Yeah, so, well, I just personally want to just thank everyone also for making the time out of your days to join us today.
And the silver lining is that despite the torrential downpours, we could watch this from home.
Exactly, exactly. So I see Nicole is busy writing up our final number. So we'll just be one moment later. You know any good jokes, Leora? You can tell the audience. What else can we say? We were just saying that the last time we got dressed up like this was our daughter's bat mitzvah back in February, so it actually gave us a chance to put on our clothes, nice clothes, before we came down here this morning. And so I think I see Nicole. Okay, Nicole, give it to us, please. We can't do this for much longer. Okay.
A drum roll.
Drum roll. So we have raised the grand total of $1,300,000. And It is not too late to give, but in the meantime, a heartfelt thank you, thank you, thank you.
And this concludes our program today. Have a great weekend. Please stay involved, visit our website, and remember, we couldn't do this important work without you.